Welcome and thank you for standing by. At this time, all participants are in a listen-only mode. During the question and answer session, please press *1 on your phone. Today's conference is being recorded. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. Now I'd like to turn today's meeting to Liz Matthews. You may begin.
Great, thank you. Thanks, everybody. Hello, and we're glad to have you with us today for our topic, Interested in Working for the Federal Government, Learn How to Navigate the Federal Hiring Process. But before we get started, I just want to review a few things about the webinar classroom so that you all can get the most out of the session. Obviously, you've already discovered the chat, so that's great. I'm glad you all are connecting over the chat box. That's great. And we invite you to participate in a variety of other ways. If you have questions for our presenter, you can submit them at any time by using the Q&A feature in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. And if your questions don't get covered during the presentation, we will queue them up for the formal question and answer portion of the session. Often we combine similar questions, so just listen closely in case your question is answered within another one. And likewise, if you have a technical issue, just let us know through the Q&A feature. We did just cut off the chat, but we will turn it on again later in the presentation so that you can share your tips and resources and ideas with other attendees. Please do keep your conversations in the chat focused on the topic of the presentation. Know that you can also send a chat message privately to the host and presenters, but your message to attendees will be visible to everybody. So just keep that in mind as you compose your messages. To see a text version of this verbal presentation, please click on the box directly above the Adobe logo at the bottom right corner of the presentation box. I'm going to highlight that right now with the green arrow. Hopefully you see that. And just below the slides, the presentation slides, you'll see a files doc where you can download all of the materials related to this session that are posted there. And that is, again, use my little green arrow right over here. Okay, so this session is being recorded, and it will be available on the Webinars for Vistas page of the campus, along with all the other presentations that we conduct. So welcome to this webinar for AmeriCorps VISTA members and recent alums. Interested in working for the federal government? Learn how to navigate the federal hiring process. So I'm your host, Liz Matthews. I'm an outreach specialist and VISTA alum with the AmeriCorps VISTA team at the Corporation for National and Community Service here in Washington, D.C. And assisting me today are Suzanne and Robin with campaign consultation. So you'll see us in the chat and in the Q&A to assist you during today's session and to help you get your questions answered. So let's take a minute to look at our agenda. It's a very full agenda today, packed with information that should be very helpful to you in navigating the federal hiring process. We want to start off by making sure you know about the President's Task Force on Expanding National Service. This task force is directly related to this topic, and even the President understands and values the importance of national service members working for the federal government. Then I'm going to turn it over to Todd Florsheim, who's our guest speaker from the Office of Personnel Management. And he's going to go into detail about how to find and apply to positions through the main government hiring website, USAJobs.gov. And then you may recall from pre-service orientation from PSO that you, after successfully completing your term of service as a VISTA, will receive the non-competitive eligibility status. So while Todd is also going to address that, we want to make sure that you understand what NCE is and how you can use the status to help you stand out as a candidate. And then finally, we're just going to do a quick review of how to access your VISTA Certification of Service letter to prove your status when applying to federal positions. So we also decided to create this webinar as a two-part series because there's so much information in learning how to navigate the federal hiring process. So part 2 will focus on federal resume writing, and that will take place on July 22nd. So just stay tuned on the campus, and you'll receive an email about registering for that event. So we will monitor the Q&A box throughout the presentation. We'll also pause after Todd's presentation, and then at the very end, you'll have an opportunity to get any remaining questions answered. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay. Something's happening to our slides. Just need the next one. There we go. Okay. So I just want to make you all aware of the fact that President Obama announced last July he created a task force on expanding national service. And the goal of this task force is to advance agency and administration priorities through the expansion of national service. That's you. And there are 6 ways that they are trying to achieve this goal. And the one that I wanted to point out is number 2, which is a pipeline to public service. So you, as a national service participant serving in AmeriCorps VISTA, are already learning the skills that you need and getting the experience that you need, and that is very useful in working in the public service, in working in the government. So by educating you all about how to navigate the application process for federal employment, and simultaneously we're working with federal hiring managers from all different agencies about why you make great job candidates and how to use your NCE status, hopefully we can achieve this goal. So I'm excited to have an expert with us here today from OPM, the Office of Personnel Management, Todd Florsheim. Todd is a senior federal recruitment advisor with OPM. And just so you know, OPM is the federal agency that works in several broad categories to recruit and retain a workforce for the American people. They also are the ones that are behind USAJobs.gov. So Todd is going to help us demystify how you go about finding and applying to positions through USA Jobs. So I will now turn it over to Todd. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Liz. And first I want to start off, but whoops. Oh, you changed it. Gotcha. First I want to start off by thanking Liz and her crew. I will tell everybody out there, she has been in a very, for lack of better words, vicious, which is a good thing, mind you, push to really make sure that federal agencies understand the value that you bring to the table as somebody that's been a part of AmeriCorps VISTA. And her team has been out there working with agencies as well as with OPM to help implement the national service participants and get more knowledge out there about it. So kudos to her and her team for doing that, and I think it's a really good thing. But I'd also like to, if I may, I'd like to thank everyone on here for doing what you're doing. Just the fact that you volunteer, to go out and help others, I think speaks volumes about the type of person that you are. So this is actually kind of my pleasure to be able to present to you today. And what my intention is to try to give you as much information as I can, not only just about how to use USA Jobs and how to manipulate through the system and understand how you can get the system to work for you, but to also talk about some of the ways that the non-competitive eligibility that you'll have can be used in this process, and also, like she mentioned earlier, try to demystify some of the things that are out there. We do recognize that there's some, there can be some confusion. There can be situations where people get confused and think the process goes a certain way. So I will do my best to try to throw that into the presentation itself, as well as, I've got a few tips along the way that I'll toss out there. And then as Liz stated earlier, we're splitting this up. My colleague Tom Formby will be doing the writing your federal resume. So the two kind of tie together And then he'll give, hopefully, what will end up being for you an eye-opening presentation on how to, what are we looking for, and where can you find it. So if you can tune in for the next one, too, I really think that it'll be worth your while. As best we can, we're going to just kind of go through the briefing. If there is, something absolutely pressing, then by all means, type it in the chat over there, and hopefully, Liz or somebody will kind of shake the tree and let me know that it's pressing. If not, we'll try to answer the questions once we get done with this, so that way we can make sure we get through with enough time, and then I can get into the specifics if it's an individual situation. So without further ado, this is what we're going to cover. We're going to talk about, why working for the federal government, what are some of the benefits to working for the federal government, and then we'll kind of walk step by step through the different portions of the application process that you're going to go through if you haven't already done this before. And then we'll discuss, although it's only one slide, it's actually pretty in-depth. We'll discuss what happens next, meaning what happens after you hit that apply online and your resume goes off into wherever it goes, to try to give you an understanding of what's happening on the back end that you don't get to see. And it's just to try to give you a little bit better understanding of kind of why we do what we do in the federal government. There is a method to our madness on this, so we try to make sure that we can give you a little bit more information to help you understand why we're doing what we do. And then I'll show you some of the additional resources that can help you after we hang up off of here, so that way you've got additional places that you can go to pull information on that. All right, so why work for the federal government? The first one, when we're normally presenting out there to applicants, they aren't typical to have come from somewhere where they did public service. Very different crowd, of course, that I'm speaking to today, so this is kind of a nice thing. But, normally we're trying to talk to people about the fact that, public service in my mind is kind of a calling. It's something that I take very seriously. I'm an old retired Army guy, so I've been in some sort of government thing now for about 25 years. And I feel very passionate about it. Serving in the federal government gives you a chance to immediately impact the public. So in your cases, it gives you a chance to continue on with what you're currently doing. Might not be the very specific thing that you're doing, but the overall effect of trying to serve the public and help people out kind of fits right in line with what you currently are doing or you have done in the recent past here. The programs that are out there and amongst the different agencies, and they vary greatly, but they have such a large impact. And like Liz mentioned, from an OPM perspective, where we kind of come into play, and that was kind of the draw for me to come to where I'm at, is I don't recruit for OPM. Rather, I help federal agencies understand what they can do for recruitment, how they could recruit better, how they could go out and target talent, how they could use the non-competitive eligibilities, those kind of things. And then I also try to help the public in getting into the federal government as well. So it's a larger impact as opposed to just being right there at the agency. And I will tell you, in most cases, because the agencies are designed to serve the public, it's a national, kind of a national challenge that you end up with, because you are affecting more than just those in your locality. So you kind of get a much bigger, broader picture by serving. A lot of opportunities within the federal government. I know each and every one of you, the last I saw before we switched over, there was over 300 on there, I think almost 400. So there's a lot of different people on the line right now, and I'm sure a lot of different people with different goals that they want to achieve, different directions that they want to go in. And what's nice is the government affords you this opportunity to evolve both professionally as well as personally, just because of the sheer number of jobs that are out there. And as far as the occupational specialties, usually what we say is if the private sector has it, more than likely the government's got it. But on top of that, the government has positions that the private sector doesn't have, right? So real quick, easy one that most people are aware of. You're not going to be in the private sector protecting the president, right? Secret Service is going to do that. You got to be a Fed to be able to do that. So there's a lot of unique opportunities out there, and pretty much, you know, regardless of whatever your direction is, most people are able to find something that is of interest to them. Competitive compensation and work-life balance. This one's always kind of interesting because, you know, you can read an article today that might say that federal employees make more than the private sector counterparts. You can go to tomorrow and have another article that says the exact opposite. I'm not here to argue one way or the other, but what I would say is that in the big picture of things, it's good pay for the job that you do, and it's good benefits for the job that you do. And I will definitely say this: when it comes to work-life, the government has led for years the push for work-life balance. That's been a big thing out there. So, for example, I'll use myself. I do a alternate work schedule, so I work 9.5-hour days. All right, half an hour off for lunch. But that affords me one day during the week that I'll work an 8-hour day, and then one day during the pay period, I should say, 2-week period, and then one day off. So I take every other Friday off. So it's not a bad deal to have a 3-day weekend every other weekend, as well as working from home, so doing telework. Matter of fact, I'm currently speaking to you from the comforts of my own office in my house. We are afforded the ability to, in most cases, to be able to do some work from home. And just if for those of you that are in the D.C. area, you can relate to this, just to not have to deal with the traffic on an everyday basis, to me is worth it, even if it's only 1 or 2 times a week or something. But anyhow, I will tell you the work-life balance is something that's a big focus. The last thing on this slide, anyways, that I want to say is that the one thing that's nice about the government is that, you know, besides being a part of a larger team, you are able to be that individual and progress as an individual on there. And dependent upon where you're at and what you're doing, or even how important it is to you, it's something that I have personally enjoyed over the last couple of years because of the environment that we're set in. Okay, so let's talk real quick about pay. This is usually most people's favorite topic. The general schedule is what the norm is for pay scales out there. Now, there are other pay scales. There are other, you'll notice that out there. You'll see that the job is not listed as, say, a GS5. It's listed as some other odd number or odd letters. But the vast majority are in the GS pay scale. I'll show you an example of that here in just a second. So the pay scale goes from grade 1 through grade 15, and then within that there are steps. The steps are 1 through 10, and what we do with that is that's to give you increases throughout the time that you are in that pay grade. Just to kind of clarify, you do not have, like if you came on board as a GS5, you do not have to go all the way up to step 10 before you can move up to the next pay grade. It's just there as you continue on, because eventually, as you move up through the pay grades, in your position may top out where it stops at a certain level, and once you're at that level, they don't want you to be stagnant where you would never have any kind of a pay raise. So, and I'll show you an example here in just a minute. And when I show you the example, you're going to see that it varies by geographic location. Okay, no big secret. It's a lot more expensive to live in certain places throughout the nation than it is in others. So some places are afforded a locality pay. The locality pay is added into the base pay to make up for the expense of living in that area. So you'll see some of the variances on there for that. You'll notice on there that some of the grades vary by occupation as far as the entry level. Sometimes that's because of an educational requirement. It could be because of experience requirement. There's any number of reasons why. Those types of things can be done out that way. So sometimes you will see a title of a job and starting off at an entry-level position, and it might be, say, at a grade 5, a GS5, but on another agency you'll see maybe a GS7 for the same title, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the job description is identical in there. They may have a different reason for why they're doing it. Many of the jobs you will notice out there will have a progression to it. So what we call that is typically it's referred to as a career ladder. If you're familiar at all with the Pathways programs, those positions, those are for the internships, recent graduates, and the Presidential Management Fellows. Those positions, for example, have a progression to them where you come in at one pay grade, but then there is room for growth over time without having to recompete. So that's something that you should look for, and I'll try to point that out, and I believe Tom will do the same when you do the resume writing as well. So let's click over real quick here to the pay scale. This is just for reference, just to give you an idea of how it looks and an understanding of how it differs in some of the geographic locations. If you look down at the very bottom of the slide, you'll notice that it says rest of U.S. So that's what the norm is. That's kind of your base. And then any locality pay would be added to that to get to where, say, right above it is Washington, D.C. So a GS5 step 1 on this example is $31,628, but if you were in Washington, D.C., that same GS5 step 1 is making $34,415. So you'll see that there's a difference as far as the pay scale goes and on up through. And obviously, we're just showing you 5, 7, 9, 11. However, it does continue on up and down. And just so you know and have an understanding, many of the grades out there they skip the even numbers, and that so in other words, you start off, say, as a GS5, your next promotion may be to a 7, your next one after that to a 9, your next one after that to an 11, and then at that point you're going down to single digits, to 12, 13, 14, 15, if the position offers that. So just so you kind of have an understanding how that goes. Okay, so let's get into the actual site itself and using the site, and these are the steps that we're going to run through. Searching for the jobs, usually isn't that kind of tough, but what we do is I'm going to want to talk about some specific areas within that. I'll go over some of the job opportunity announcement things. Again, I don't want to steal too much of Tom's thunder when he does the resume, so I'll touch base on a handful of those things. Talk about how to manage your account, how to make it work for you, how to apply for the job as you go through, and then how to kind of keep track of everything and where you can go. If you've been on USA Jobs for a couple years, you'll notice that over time, USA Jobs has changed as far as the look and feel of it, and that's primarily due to yourselves because the USA Jobs team actually takes a lot of the comments that are made and the questions or sometimes, the confusion, and takes that information and tries to make the site better so that way it's more user-friendly. So just so you know, they are absolutely listening and trying to make it a better experience for you. So this is the USA Jobs homepage. A couple things that I want to point out on this page right here is first, you've got the icons across the top. You've got your home, you've got your search jobs, you've got your My Account, and your Resource Center. And I'm gonna come back and address a few of these as we go through this. More importantly, in the center of it, you've got what we call our basic search. So you've got the keyword and the location. The presentation itself is going to cover the advanced search. So if you look underneath the big old search button, you'll see it says advanced search. So I'm going to walk you kind of through that piece of it. But below that, you see a couple links on there, and these are just some quick targeted links to get people to some of the things that are within the Resource Center, which is that tab up on top. Lastly, if you look, you see right now the example we're using has an ad within what we call our spotlight for the Army Civilian Service. occasionally agencies are going to put out some information that they ask us to kind of spotlight and highlight, and that's exactly where it will go. Now, what I will tell you is my office is also working on setting up dates that will be posted soon within that spotlight to be presenting the federal resume writing presentation as well. So you'll see those as they come on, and so I do encourage you to kind of click through the different spotlights when you get the opportunity and the chance to do so. Okay, so moving over to the actual search engine itself. So if we click Advanced Search, this is what we're brought up to. Not much different other than maybe what the look is, but the actual information there is probably not much different than any other search engine that you've used out there. Just a couple things that I want to point out about it. Under keywords, the way this is currently set up right now is that if you put a keyword in there, the search mechanism is designed to try to find that word in the title of the job, or of the position. All right, so if it's a human resource specialist and you type the word specialist in there, then that would be the first ones that are going to show up, or if you typed in human resources. We're trying to have them where they show up, and I say we loosely. I don't work for USA Jobs, but I do. They're in the same building, and I work alongside of them. The objective here is to try to have the ones that should be the most relevant to what you're searching for pop up first. So if you put accountant in there, then the first ones you see should have the word accountant in there. The ones that follow after that, the next group will end up being ones that have the word accountant in the main body of the job announcement. And then the last ones that will follow are the ones that somewhere in there, in amongst all the other sections, there's the word accountant. They did that a couple years ago because, for example, if you typed in human resources, you potentially ended up with almost every job that's out there, because oftentimes they will say in their announcements that the human resource section or human resource specialist will contact you, so on and so forth. So you'd end up with jobs that you're not qualified for, you're not even looking for, but because that word was thrown in there. So that's one of the reasons why they went with having the search mechanism work like that. Well, you know what, real quick, one other thing I want to mention. I try to get people to understand that sometimes we have to open up what I call our aperture a little bit. So since the example is an accountant, more often than not, when I'm out talking to applicants, what they end up telling me is, well, I'm an accountant, so I'm looking for an accountant job. Kind of my discussion back with them is to be aware of the fact that there are other things that somebody with accounting experience can do. You know, maybe it's in budget, maybe it's in finance, maybe it's auditing. There's any number of things. So I encourage you to kind of think outside of the box and look at, you know, what are some of the other potential jobs that you could do to put in, or even other keywords that you could put in that might generate a position that you'd be interested in. And I'll show you a way to do that here on this next slide as we go down. So first I want to talk about salary and pay grade. All right, so one thing with the government is if you are working and you're out there making, I don't know, $40,000 a year, it really doesn't have much to do with what position we're looking to put you in, okay? The pay does not directly translate over into what grade level you are eligible for, all right? So essentially what I'm saying with that is that just because somebody paid you, you know, we'll have people that have been contractors, so there may be, you know, they may be making, I don't know, $200,000. I'll use as an example. Well, the government pay scale doesn't go to $200,000, right? So that's not going to happen, and it doesn't mean that they're going to pay this person at the GS-15 Step 10 level because somebody else paid them this amazing amount of money. Okay, it's all based off of your experience and what you bring to the table, and the jobs themselves are coded to a certain pay level because it's within that GS, the position is classified at that position level, okay? So as you're looking on this salary and pay grade here, you can play around with it. You can feel free to put in whatever your heart desires, whether it's the salary, the pay grade, or whichever. But one thing I would ask that you do is do a search, at least one search, without putting any pay grade things in there. And the reason that I mention that is that there's a lot of jobs out there that while you might be thinking, well, I should start off as, and I'll use a GS9 as an example, I should start off as a GS9, and if you limit your search to GS9 and above, there may be a GS7 out there that while you start off as a 7, the promotion potential for it is all the way up to a 13 or a 14, but you'll never see that job if you put it in there that you're not willing to look at anything below a 9. So if your financial situation is such that that's what it means, and I got it, I understand, but I'm just saying it's always good to look at what all of your options are, because the potential is if you got that 7, it's possible for you to become that 9 a year later. So it's just kind of food for thought, something to kind of keep in mind as you're doing your searches. So then the last category down at the bottom down there is occupational series or job category. So this is the area where we're going to list off this whole slew of our different occupations that we have within the government. So this is a great little tool for you to scroll through and try to find, like my example for the keywords, other things that you think you might be eligible for or you might be interested in by clicking through each one of these. You'll also notice on the left-hand side of that little block there, it says series, and it gives a 4-digit code. So all government jobs are coded with a 4-digit code, and that code can be used as a search mechanism. So for example, I am a human resource specialist, right? That is my official, on paper, I'm a 0201. That's the term. Now, as a 0201 HR specialist, you could be placed in recruitment and placement, you could be a equal opportunity, you could be labor relations, you could be employee relations, you could be classification, you could be staffing. You kind of see where I'm going with this. It goes on and on and on. So while the big collective is human resource specialist, you're broken down into different groups, and then of course once you're into those groups, your particular job might be very, very different, because while I'm in recruitment and placement, I do a very different job, since we're up at OPM headquarters at the policy level, than somebody who might be doing the actual physical recruitment for their agency. But what I do encourage you to do is scroll through that and see if there's any jobs or any names of occupations that's, kind of spur your interest, that you think might relate directly to what you do, but is just a different term or different word that's being used that you hadn't necessarily thought of. All right, so hopefully then we can kind of open that aperture up a little bit and get you some additional opportunities. Okay, so if we were to scroll down a little bit farther, we've got location and department and agency. So location-wise, in the beginning, I was watching the chat log, and it pretty much appears you guys are all over the place, which is great. Realizing that, little less, I believe it's a little less than 20% of the federal government is in the D.C. general area, Lower Maryland, Upper Virginia. But over 80% of the federal government jobs are scattered throughout the nation. So there are opportunities out there. I don't know specifically where everything is, of course. But the point here is that this is an area for you to decide, are you willing to move? Are you looking to get back to a certain place? And it's a very individual decision here. The one thing that I will say is, feel free to start low. Like in this case, the example showing, we weeded it down to the District of Columbia. And if you're not finding what you're looking for, then start to back out of it and make it a little bit more broad. I did a training session in Detroit, and I will tell you, in Detroit itself, there were not a lot of government jobs. This was probably two and a half years ago when we did it. So at the time, there were not a lot of government jobs there, and many of the people we were talking to had no desire to work outside of the actual Detroit area, so that can make it a little bit tough. So I encourage you to kind of back it out, do a search. If you're not looking to move, that's fine. But if you're open to moving, then I would tell you leave it as, either the United States or even in worldwide, if that's what you're interested in. Now, as far as the agencies go, many of us have kind of an idea of what an agency might do, might be, and places we might want to work. The one thing I will say is, if you've got an agency that you specifically like what their mission is, you would really like to be a part of it, then I encourage you to set up a search to target that agency itself. But on the flip side of that, there are over 300 departments and agencies throughout the federal government. So most of us don't know all of the missions or all of the jobs and all of the opportunities that these different agencies provide. So my recommendation is, at the very least, do a search without labeling an agency to see what else is out there, because it might also start to jar up some ideas or thoughts, and you might start to hone in on other agencies that you weren't aware of. Okay. So here, this part's, we're kind of starting the downhill slide here for these next two parts of it, and then we're going to go right back up. But the work type and the work schedule, all I can say on this part here is it's completely up to you. It's what you're interested in doing, or it's what you're willing to do. You can pick out as much or as little on there as you want, and that'll help determine what's actually going to show up. The posting options, people get confused on this on here, and here's what I will tell you, right? So it verbatim says, exclude postings for jobs open longer than 30 days. So on here, it's saying no, don't do it. My recommendation to you is leave it the way it is. There are jobs that are posted by agencies out there that are what we call open continuous, and that job is open for 365 days. And what it's done is they're not going to wait to process you for 365 days. If you read throughout the job announcement, the announcement itself will tell you that on certain dates, it's usually every couple months, on certain dates they're going to pull all applicants and process you through at that time, because it's usually for jobs that they are constantly filling. So it's one of those things that there's no harm in taking a look at it. If for some reason you just decide I don't want to look at anything that's like that, that's fine. You can click yes and not look at it. But I do encourage you to take a look at, again, everything that's available out there. All right, and the last section right here is the who may apply. The who may apply section is the original intention with the who may apply section was so that way those that do not have any kind of non-competitive eligibility, those that have never been a veteran eligible for veterans preference, and those that have never been in the federal government, either current or former, it was to separate it out so they don't have to look at the jobs that they're not eligible for, okay? Because jobs can be posted on USAJobs under what we call merit promotions, and also under delegated examining, which is the all U.S. citizens that you see out there. So if you've never served in the military, never done anything that would get you a non-competitive eligibility, so never been a Fed, never served in the military and that, then you're not eligible for one of those merit promotion positions. So why have you look at it? And that's kind of where we're at with this thing. So as we go down through, some of you may have been in the federal government, either currently or you may have been formerly, and there's some links there that actually give you some instructions on what you have to have and how long you had to have served during that time, and the fact that you needed to be in the competitive service. So one thing I do want to mention is that jobs out there can kind of be classified between accepted service and competitive service. All right, it's not, you don't need to worry about the details behind it, but the quick and simple of this is competitive service jobs, we've got a very specific way that they have to be done. All right, that's the vast majority of your jobs. That's probably 70-some-odd% of all jobs are going to be in the competitive service. There are others that are what we call accepted service. That means we've given them the exception. Okay, there are only certain exceptions that we've given, but we have given them the exceptions. One of those is you don't have to post it on USAJobs. All right, so why am I telling you this? Because that means if you're looking for a job with a particular agency and you don't see it on USAJobs, there is a chance that that agency, those jobs you're looking for might fall under accepted service, and the agency is only posted on their website. So it behooves you to take a look at their website as well, just to make sure that it's not a position under accepted service. Okay, and again, I don't want to get in too far into the detail on it, but I do want to make you aware of the fact that not every single job will be on USAJobs. Some agencies do post them only on their site because that entire agency is accepted service, so they do things a little bit different. It's out there, so just be aware of it. So at this point, in your case, you've got the third bullet down there, a person with non-competitive appointment eligibility, right? So you would be clicking yes, I fall into one of these categories, and that's going to allow you, as an AmeriCorps VISTA, to see all of the jobs that are out there and all of the jobs that are available. Okay? So at that point, then we would go and hit search jobs.
Hold on, Todd. I just want to point out, this is Liz. I want to make sure everybody heard that. This is really an important part because it applies to you all. So when you're able to click that checkbox that Todd just highlighted for you under the Who May Apply box, you are a person with non-competitive appointment eligibility. And even though they use the word appointment and we tend to use the word status, that's the same thing.
Yeah, and you know what? And I was going to say it a little bit later, but let me point this out that's a great. Liz made this a great spot to say it at. When jobs are posted out there, agencies have the option to use as many of the different authorities as they choose to. So when you click yes, you might see agencies that are posting jobs out there that have just status candidates and what's called VEOA, which is Veterans Employment Opportunity Act. And they may not be looking at anybody for a non-competitive eligibility, all right? Most of them do, but I just want you to be aware of that because you're going to want to look through the position and make sure that they're saying that they're considering the non-competitive appointments. So just be aware of that when you're looking through the positions as you're going down through those. But Liz is absolutely correct. This, by having served in VISTA, having done what you've done or doing what you're currently doing, this affords you an opportunity to be able to be looked at for positions that you normally would not be eligible for. All right, because we're really looking at current and former feds if it falls under what we call merit promotions, and it's categorized on the job announcement as a status candidate. Because a status candidate technically is a current or a former fed. But because of your eligibility, this gives you an opportunity to apply to things that you normally would not be allowed to apply for. All right, so it gives you the in. Some people like to use the terms, we have internal and we have external. Well, the internals are the ones that we call, it falls under what we call merit promotions, and that's the status candidates. So this gives you an opportunity to apply to something that normally you wouldn't because you're not a current or a former fed, if that's the case. So actually, that's a great point to bring up. All right, so if we hit the search jobs button, again, nothing magical is happening here. It's probably nothing that you haven't seen before, but there's a couple things that I want to point out on here. So on the left-hand side of this, the search criteria that you input is going to show up right there. All right, you are currently searching on, and then it lists off the things that you did your search for. We tried to put that there because if you knew this system from years ago, you didn't have something like this. And the reason why we do that is that, you know, maybe you look at this thing and you realize that there was only 3 results that came up when the search was done at that time. So then maybe what you decide is, well, let me take a step back and let me pull out grades 11 through 14 and see how many additional ones come up. It lets you kind of play around with it without having to revert all the way back to the original search mechanism. To include, if you go a little farther down below that, you've got refine your results. Does the same thing, only in this case, maybe you've got too many things that have shown up, and you want to reduce it down even farther. Maybe you didn't say a location, and now you do want to say a location. Whatever you didn't use gets populated down below. So again, if we hit the remove button and took the word grade 11 through 14 out, it will populate down underneath the refine, so that way you could go back and use it again if you chose to. I don't know, obviously, if any of you or all of you or some of you have a USA Jobs account. I'm going to discuss a little bit about setting up the account, but we highly recommend that you set up an account if you're going to use USA Jobs, because in time, the USA Jobs team is working on making the profile better to help you out with your searches. So currently, right now, it's not where they want it to be. They're making some changes that are going to really greatly help you out. All right, but in the meantime, you see the red circle that's around the what says Save This Search. So this is the part that I'd like you to kind of pay attention to, because we really would like to try to have the system working for you as opposed to you having to get into the system every day to constantly be looking for those positions. If you are logged in and you have created an account, then if you like this search, if it produced the results you're looking for, you can click that Save the Search, And what it's going to do is it'll take you back to the advanced search that you just typed out. You'll see everything that you typed out. But at the bottom of it, rather than just saying, you know, let's go search, it's going to ask you to name that search. So maybe in this case we name this one accountant, since that's the keyword. And then it's going to ask you, do you want to be notified daily, weekly, monthly, none? It's your choice. Now, my suggestion is that you get notified daily. And the reason is because a lot of agencies, due to the sheer volume of applications, they're posting the job for 5 days. So if you have a weekly on there, the potential is if something gets posted, you're going to miss it in the beginning, right, or in the end, or somewhere in there, because you're going to have 2 days that you're not doing it. So my recommendation here is do it daily, so that way you see everything. If you've got a smartphone, I never shut mine off, right? I'm not looking for a job, but it populates every day on my phone and my email telling me that these are the, and it usually lists off, if there are 10 jobs that are new, it will list off the 10 jobs that are new. If there's 2 jobs that are new, it will only list off the 2 jobs that are new. But if there are still jobs that are open, they haven't closed out yet, but maybe they were posted a day, 2 days, 3 days, 10 days, something like that, but they're still open and available, it's going to provide you a link that's going to tell you view additional opportunities. And you'll be able to click on that, and then it takes you right back to the screen that you're looking at right now as though you just did the search all over again. But it's a way to get the system to work for you instead of you having to do it on your own. And you can have up to 10 different searches set up. So you can pick out, and like I said, in this case, maybe you do a search the way we did it on here. Maybe another search, you pull out District of Columbia because you want to see what's out there all throughout the world. You know, maybe you pull out the pay grades, or maybe you have a different skill altogether, and you add the keyword in for a different skill. Again, it's completely up to you on how you want to do it. But it's a good tool to use, so that way you don't have to go around and constantly log in to check what's new. If you look in the center of it, this is what, it's producing the portions of the job announcement itself, just to kind of give you enough information to decide if you're really interested and you want to get down into the details behind it. The title of the job itself is what takes you, it's linked to the job announcement. If you look over on the right-hand side of the title, you'll see where it says Save Job and More Like This. More Like This, pretty self-explanatory. Save Job. If you are logged in and you have an account, if you click Save Job, it's going to save that job over to your account, so you don't have to go back and find it. So this is a great tool to use, that if you're on your lunch break or you're on your phone heading into work and you click on the search and you see a job that you're interested in, but you don't have time to go through it, go back and look at it, but you know you want to readdress it later, you click Save Job, and it's going to save it over to your account, and then you won't have to go back through the search to try to find it again. So it's a good way to kind of use the system to your advantage. All right, so if we were to click on the title of a job, right, it's going to bring you over to what we call the job opportunity announcement. And the job opportunity announcement, really simple, is just a big fancy word for job posting. So if you take a look on here, this just gives you all the information that you're going to see there. The only thing I want to point out on the actual announcement itself, since I mentioned it before, if you look down where the blue letters are, where it starts to say salary, open period, series, and grade, and then you see promotion potential. So if you're looking for a job with kind of a career ladder that gives some promotion potential, that's where it's going to show what the highest pay grade is for that job sitting at that desk. All right, so let's say back in series and grade, if it said GS 0510 and if it said 12, then that means you start off as a 12, but you have the ability to be promoted all the way up to 14 without having to recompete, without having to reapply. So the job itself finishes out, they want to get you up to a 14 level, okay? So across the top of the job announcement, you'll see there are little tabs. You have an overview, a duties, a qualifications and evaluations, you have benefits and other information, and you have how to apply. So those tabs just take you through all the information that you need to know for the job itself. When we do the resume writing, we'll get into detail on what each of those sections mean. And then over on the right-hand side, you've got how you're actually going to go through the process to apply. You have your Apply Online button. Print Preview, pretty self-explanatory. We have the Save Job that offers you a chance just to save it. And then you've got the share job. I'm a big advocate for, obviously you guys network. I see you talking on here, so you know a lot of people. If you see a job that you're not interested in but you think your friend might be, why not share it with them and send it across? It's very simple to use, really easy tool. So I'm going to come back and talk again about that section here in just a second. But let's go over, if you don't have an account, real quick, I just want to mention a couple things on the account. So in the upper right-hand corner, you see a red block that says sign in or create an account. All right, if you haven't created an account, then go and create an account. It's going to bring you to a page that looks like this. And only reason that we want to mention some of this stuff is that we are going to ask you some personal information, such as your address, contact information, if you are a veteran, if you are a former Fed, those kind of things. So it's important to put the information down. Some of this information will move forward with your application. So we want to make you aware of it, all right? So as you start to put some of this stuff in, again, it's going to mention veterans preference, and then as you get down towards the bottom of it, it's going to mention some of the special hiring options, okay? Keep in mind, because this usually comes up when we talk with AmeriCorps VISTA or Peace Corps or whatever, when they created this originally, they just put this on there to get it on there. Currently right now, if you are eligible for a veterans recruitment appointment and you click off that little square right there, nothing happens. All right, it's not set up to do anything. It's more to try to get people to understand. However, we have already talked. We spoke with Liz and her team about this as well. We've already talked with USA Jobs about making sure that this list, when it is finally able to be searched by recruiters, we've putting all of the different special hiring authorities in there, and of course to include VISTA as well. So don't feel like you're missing out on anything, because right now that's not part of a mechanism that's doing a whole lot. It's the intention is there, and they're building it as we go.
I hope you guys heard that. See, we're listening to you, and we're trying to make it easier for you to identify yourself as an AmeriCorps VISTA member. So just know that we're working on it, and stay tuned, and hopefully someday you'll be applying, and all of a sudden it'll appear, and you'll be able to check that box.
Yeah, and ultimately that's the goal. It's also for, because eventually we're going to have a whole new thing for resume mining for the those that are out there recruiting. So that's part of the goal as well. So it's to come. You know, it's just like Liz said. You just know that it's in the front of everyone's mind. So once you've completed all that, it pops you over to what's called the My Account section. This can be accessed up through the top. If you look at the top of the page, you see where it says My Account. If you click that, it brings you right to this page. Of course, you can see my friend Carlos Del Toro built this, so it's under his name. If you need to go back and edit anything that was in there, let's say somewhere along the way you became a Fed, so you would want to go back in there and say, yes, I am now a current Fed. You could hit Edit Profile, all right? And what that's going to do is that's going to bring you to the profile all over again, where you'll be able to go back in and change the information that you would have already put in. It also offers other information as you go through for the hiring eligibility, other information. They just put in the demographics. It's a voluntary thing, so I want to make sure everybody understands that. There's a little block on there that says if you don't want to participate, you don't have to participate. Real simple and easy. And then account information as far as changing passwords and things like that. So there's not a whole lot to it for that. Save searches. Okay, so if you recall, when we were back on the actual search itself, there was a red circle around it that said Save this search. If you click yes, save this search, and I want to be notified, you know, daily, weekly, monthly, whatever, it will have brought you over. It will have put it over in this section. Okay, you named it whatever. So in this case, Carlos named one North Search. That gives him the opportunity to view the results again if he wants to go in and look at it. He can edit it. He can duplicate it. He can delete it, and then he has the renew chance. All right. So what USA Jobs is trying to do, because there are loads and loads of people registered on USA Jobs, is they require that at least once a year or on a one-year timeline, somewhere in there, you need to go in and click renew to say that you still want to see that search, right? And they're giving you the date that it's expiring on there, just so that way, for the sheer volume, if people aren't actually out there searching for things, then they don't want to keep the data on there. So it's just to try to make things a little bit easier. But again, I highly encourage you. You are allowed up to 10 different searches on there, so I highly, highly, highly encourage you to let the system work for you. Under the Save Jobs, remember I mentioned if you save the job, because you're in a rush. You just want to make sure you can go back and look at it later. Well, this is where it brings it to. The key thing on here is that it identifies when the closing date is. All right, that means the job it opened on whatever day, but it's going to close 11/59. That first one on there is on 3/21/2014. That job was going to close, so you need to be aware of it. Down below that, there's the notification settings that will notify you 3 days out to let you know that that job's about to close. And it's essentially telling you, hey, at one time you were interested in at least taking a look at it, so don't forget to go back and look at it because it's going to close in 3 days. I do highly recommend that you select that because, life goes on. There's a lot going on when it comes to your lives. So sometimes we get preoccupied with something else, and it's always good to have a little reminder that we had that position in there that you might be interested in. Okay, so resumes. Not going to get into the details, obviously, about the resume itself, since that's going to be covered here in the next session. But on here, you are authorized to have up to 5 resumes on the system itself. You can either upload a resume, which means you built it on your own, you typed it out, and you uploaded the file, or you can build it on the USA Jobs Resume Builder. We have no stance on whether you do one or the other. The one thing that I was talking with Liz about when we were preparing for this is very common practice out there seems to be to take the resume that you use for every other application in the private sector and to upload it and then think that that's going to work for the federal government. And I'm here to tell you it's probably not going to work. Which is why we really want to go through the details on the resume writing when we do that session. We have different requirements. We have different information that we need on your resume in order to be able to process you and in order to be able to determine your basic eligibility as well as to decide where you would fit in on the rating and ranking scales. So all I ask from you is, whichever way you decide to go, whether it's building it or whether it's uploading it, is look at the resume builder. And I'm going to show you just real quick because the builder itself has asterisk items that are telling you you must have this information on your resume, okay? We need that information to get determination for you. And a lot of times that's what happens, and I'll give you a quick example. I will see resumes that will say, I worked somewhere from 2011 to 2002, or to 2012. Well, that might work in the private sector, but in the government, I have to determine typically 1 year specialized experience doing something. I can't determine if you did a full year or not. Because for all I know, you worked there from December 2011, and then January 2012 you quit. So I don't know because you didn't tell us, all right? So you've got to give us that information that we need, and so that's why you'll see in the builder you have to put in the month and the year. But you also have to put in the number of hours, approximate number of hours a week that you work so we can determine if it was a full-time job or a part-time job. So those are things that we need. You can see the differences right here on the screen because if you look at resume 1 and 2, the format, it says USA Jobs Resume. That means that he built the resume within the builder. So the options are to view, edit, duplicate, and delete. If you go to the third resume, he uploaded it. You notice it says document file. So he uploaded that one, and all you can do with that one is view it and delete it. So there is an advantage in some ways to being able to sit down on your own computer without being online and uploading your resume. There's also advantages if you build it because you can duplicate it. So if you're going to go in and tailor your resume, which I'm hoping you're going to do, to that specific job, you can duplicate a resume that you had on there before and then go make those changes specific to that job. But at the very least, like I said, humor me and go look at the builder. So this is kind of what the builder looks like if you haven't seen it before. It's got all the different sections on here. I'm just going to show you. I'm not going to go through the whole thing and bore you with it, but you're going to come on here. You're going to name your resume itself. And then you're going to move over to the experience section, and you see all the different red asterisk items, right? These are all the things that we need to have for the information. And where you've got that big block towards the bottom where it says duties, accomplishments, and related skills, that's where you're going to put all your information in that pertains to the job, meaning what are your experiences that directly relate to the job that you're applying for, okay? And like I said, Tom's going to talk very specifically about how we would like you to do that and how you can pull that information out of the job announcement so you know what you need to get in order to be successful with it, all right? So jumping back over to the account manager section here, you've got your saved documents. So like in your case, right, Liz mentioned that you're going to have your non-competitive eligibility letter. So I would recommend that you upload that, because if you're going to be using that, it's something you would have to keep uploading or keep a file on. If it's sitting on the account out there, then no matter where you're at, you'd have access to it. If you are a vet, then you would want to have your DD-214 on there. If you were a current or former Fed, you'd want your SF-50 to be on there, so on and so forth, right? There's a lot of different things that you potentially could be putting on there. Okay, so real quick here, let's move over to applying for a job. Nothing real magical here, except there's a couple things I want to point out. If you look over on the right-hand side, you see that little bar piece that we had earlier that I was talking about. When you are ready to apply for the job, you're going to hit that Apply Online button. A couple things are going to happen. When you hit the Apply Online button, it's going to ask you to attach any of the documents that you need to attach, right? So that's where your resume is going to go, and any additional documents that they're asking for, to include like transcripts or anything else. But then it's going to take you, you'll notice that a little block should come up that says you are now leaving USA Jobs and you're going over to the agency's talent acquisition system. I'm not sure the specific words, but that's essentially what's happening. And the reason I point that out to you is because one of the things that we have, and we get applicants that get frustrated, is you'll have a problem during as you're filling out the application, and so you'll end up contacting USA Jobs and asking them why, I don't understand what I'm supposed to have with this, or what's the requirement with this. And USA Jobs writes you back and says, we don't know anything about the job, you need to contact the agency. So what I would ask is look at USA Jobs the same way you look at Monster, Career Builder, any of the other search engines out there. It's a mechanism for agencies to put their jobs out there so they can get the public notified, all right? But they don't have anything to do with all the particulars that are inside of the job itself. So if there's a problem with the USA Jobs system, great, contact them. But once you've hit Apply Online and you move over to that other system, you need to contact the agency, because they're the ones running their talent acquisition systems, and they're the ones that are running any of the particulars within the job. So if you look down below on that right-hand side there, you see where it says Save Job, Share Job, you see Agency Contact Info. You click that, and then you've got this information right there, and it's some person that will you can contact, email or phone, and speak with them about whatever the issue is. I want to go ahead and I'm going to say it, and there's probably people ready to type it out. Understand this. The people that end up being the point of contact are not normally any kind of a call center. So they're not sitting there waiting on your calls. It is somebody working in an office who happens to be the person. It's their turn. It's their turn to be the representative for that job from that office. So they're still doing their normal, regular job, but they are also required to be the one to answer the phone and answer the email. So needless to say, the phones are exploding, the emails are just out of control. So the sooner you can apply, the better chance you have of getting an answer back before that announcement closes. Okay? So that's what we'd like you to do, is kind of focus on, if you got questions about it, get the question out there quickly, so that way you can get an answer back quickly as well. All right, also, there's a How to Apply tab up top, but also if you just scroll down through the announcement, you'll see it. Every job varies. Even if it's in the same agency, there may be different instructions for the specific job, so you've got to pay attention to what they're telling you that you need to do, especially like, what kind of documents do I need to include? All right, and this quick, simple thing is this. If the job that you're applying for has what we call a positive education requirement, which means you must have a college degree for it, and you don't include your transcripts, and they told you to include your transcripts, then it's an incomplete application. You didn't give them what they needed, okay? So it behooves you to follow the instructions and make sure that you actually put everything in there, and they will list off everything that you need to have in there. On the flip side of that, if they didn't ask for your transcripts, because there are over 100 different occupations that do not require a degree, and you turn in your transcripts, there's no harm, no foul to doing it. I will just tell you, nobody's doing anything with them, because we didn't ask for them, which means that we don't want to look at them because we didn't ask everybody else to turn theirs in either. Okay? So just kind of understand how the process goes. If we ask for it, we got to have it. If we're not asking for it, we don't need it. Sometimes they will say, if you would like, you can include them. My recommendation is absolutely. If you've got a good GPA on there, you're proud of what you've done, then absolutely show it to them. Okay. I touched base a little bit on this on here real quick, but like I said, I try to do this kind of as a last piece to make sure that we really focus on it, and Tom's going to beat up the how to apply as well, but you got to really focus on paying attention to what they're looking for. All right, last section on here is the application status. This is just so that way you know what's going on. So you apply to a job, those jobs will populate over in this area right here. All right. Now, again, I'm going to try to cut out all of the discussion that's going to probably start to happen here shortly. If you've applied to a government job before, at least once, you've probably not always had an immediate update that's happening on there for your status. If you look over on the far right-hand side, you see the column of status. All right. So the one thing I want to point out here on this is USA Jobs does not update this. The agency you are applying to through their talent acquisition system is updating this. That HR person will update it. When they update it, it will populate into USA Jobs. So if you are not hearing something back, it's been a couple weeks after the job closed, you're not hearing anything back, go over to where it says, contact the agency, contact them, politely ask, I just want to check if I'm still being considered. Okay, nothing wrong with that, because then they may not have, for whatever reason, updated the system, okay? But again, if you contact USA Jobs and say, hey, how come it didn't, move forward, it hasn't done anything, USA Jobs is going to tell you got to go contact the agency because they don't have control over that. So I'm just trying to give you some of these things that maybe will get you where you need to go a little bit faster, and I'm trying to alleviate some of the frustration. I don't want you guys getting frustrated with it. Understand, a lot of people are applying for the jobs out there, but it is more than worth it to keep up with it and not get frustrated with it, okay? So let's real quick talk about what happens next. So this is what happens after you've submitted your application. You got the little note that says your application has been received, right? So that's kind of the first thing. So now what we're telling you is we got your application, we're processing you through. And then at that point, you're kind of wondering what's happening in the back end, right? So essentially what's happening after we gather up all the stuff is we're checking to see if you meet the minimum qualifications that are required for the position, all right? It's the basic qualifications. Can you do the job? Not are you the best at doing the job, not are you in the top category, anything else, just can you do the job? So that's initially what we're looking for, all right? So when you see things that say not qualified, then that means that you didn't meet the initial qualifications for the job, okay? If you meet the initial qualifications, then the agency, if they have decided to do additional assessments, are going to conduct additional assessments. They have to tell you in the job announcement if they're going to do additional assessments, all right? So they lay it out as far as what's going to happen. Additional assessments could be like could be testing. It could be a structured interview with the HR people, which means that they're going to ask you and everybody else the exact same questions and give you the exact same amount of time to respond. It could be a writing sample. There's any number of things. If for those that have been around for a day or two, we used to do what we called KSAs, knowledge, skills, and abilities, and there was narratives you used to have to fill out. Well, we don't allow that to happen in the beginning to determine your minimum qualifications, but we do allow it if they want to use it later as an assessment. So they might tell you, they might shoot you something and say, we need you to come up with these different narratives, write this stuff out based off of what we're asking you to do, okay? So it's a number of things. For example, I had to do a writing sample, all right? Thankfully, it wasn't a handwriting sample. It was, could I put my thoughts into words? But they can do that to decide how that will help them to rate and rank people. Veterans preference does get applied at that point, and then they go and rate and rank you. All right. The requirement is for the competitive service positions under category rating is to have at least 2 categories, but typically they can have more, and typically they usually have 3 categories. They can call them whatever they want to call them. All right. They can call them 1, 2, 3. They can call them ABC. I think there's a song about this, right? But more often than not, they're kind of called qualified, well qualified, best qualified. All right. The goal is to get in that best qualified category. Okay, that's the ultimate goal here. So essentially what happens is they rate and rank you. Those that are in that top category get in front of the hiring official. All right. Now, since I've just said that, essentially we've given them a list of everybody when we're doing a competitive position. So let's talk real quick about non-competitive. right? If they've gathered up names under non-competitive for VISTA, right, and they're going to look at you non-competitively for VISTA, your names are on it's one of a couple things. One, your names could be on a list solely by itself, and it's the only list, right? If they did not, because they can go out there and actually look for VISTA only because it's non-competitive authority, right? Which means they didn't even have to post a job. So if an agency, I believe you guys are going to be doing a job fair, correct, Liz? Where agencies, if they've got, if they're going to be using the non-competitive authority, could be looking at you right then and there without posting the job out on USA Jobs. All right, that's one of the advantages to the non-competitive authority. It's exactly what it says, meaning they don't have to compete for the job. But they also, if they did throw it out there to others, whether those are current feds or whether that's all U.S., they can still populate a list with you and just go off of that list if they choose to go off of that list, okay? It says on here that they may conduct interviews. The reason why we say may conduct interviews is they're not going to interview every single person that's on that list. Some of these lists could be a couple hundred strong, all right? More often than not, it's not, but it's happened. So they're going to go through as the hiring official now, as the subject matter expert, and really pick out the ones that they're absolutely interested in sitting down with, conduct the interview, and then at that point the hiring official is going to select the best qualified candidate for the job. Then the name gets pushed back down to the Human Resources Department, and then at that point Human Resources Department contacts you as to whether or not you were selected. Okay, so I know that's a lot of information and a lot of things that are going on, but the reason why we try to explain this is by hearing all of this, I would hope that you could understand why it takes a little while to get through this process. Our whole thing with going through this process is we have to be as fair and impartial as we possibly can. We don't have the ability to do hiring the same way that you can do through a private firm, right? So we have a lot of processes we have to go through, and because of that, it can take a little bit longer. All right, so let's say you were the person that did get notified that, you know, we want to hire you. What they're going to do is they're going to send you a tentative job offer. It's tentative because you haven't gone through a background check or a security clearance if one's required. So assuming that the background check goes good and the security clearance goes good, we're going to give you the job. But we're going to give you the tentative offer first, and if you're going to do any negotiating, that's the time to do it. All right, some agencies will negotiate, some won't. Just depends on who they are, how they are, and there is no list or anything else like that. But what happens here is usually for a background investigation, it takes ballpark 7 to 10 days just to do something for like a public trust. If it's a clearance, I think the last I had heard, the secret clearances are just a couple months. Top secret, some of them have been getting done like around 4 months. They can take a while, but that's actually a pretty good deal because a long time ago, I'm showing my age here, but a long time ago, there was a backlog after September 11th happened where we had something like upwards of 200,000 people backlog. Mine took 18 months to go through, and I've got nothing in my background. So nowadays, the things go through much, much faster. Now, when that's complete and you have cleared the background check or security clearance, then you're going to get the formal job offer, and it's going to mirror what you agreed to in the tentative job offer. It's just now this is the formal one because now you've cleared the background investigation. Okay. All right, so this is towards the end of this thing here, the Resource Center. If you look in the top kind of center of the page, you see there's a thing that says Resource Center. If you just click those words, it brings you right here. If you just hover your pointer over it, it'll give you a drop-down of different categories you could go to. If you just go to the main page of it, it gives you a whole load of information. Something I do want to point out, if you look towards the right-hand side, you see a spot that says Federal Occupations. This lists off the occupational fields. Other thing, right below it, Federal Occupations by college major. If you're not sure what jobs you might be eligible for and you've got a college degree, just take a look at it. And it's not all-inclusive, but it does give you some other ideas where you might be able to apply your expertise, again, to try to open up the aperture a little bit. And then if you go look a little farther down to where it says Tips. Tips is the section where my group, every time we create a presentation that applies to applicants, or we create some sort of flyer we think would help applicants out, we put it on here so that way you have easy access to it. So this briefing, although it was created 2 years ago, so the slides are outdated, the information is the same. It's a short briefing. It's 10 minutes, real condensed version. There's a find and apply on there, but there's also resume writing. There's several other things that might help to answer some questions. And if you go a little farther down and get down to the bottom, if you need to contact USA Jobs for anything where you don't understand something or it's not working or whichever, you've got the Contact Us button right there that you can get to. All right. Last but not least here, if you do a quick search for USA Jobs YouTube, all of our videos end up over here as well, and then there's a lot of additional videos that end up out there also. So you can feel free to go to either spot and search them out, just as additional tools that you can use. So kind of to summarize here, you guys have, again, you guys have something that most people don't have, and that's that non-competitive eligibility. So there's a couple different ways that they can find you. They can find you through some of these job fairs where they're not looking to post the job because they don't want it to be competed for by everybody. They really are just trying to target specifically VISTA, for example. So they can have you come to there. They can collect your resumes. They can get stacks of them and then only look at them from the VISTA. They can put the job out there, but say they're also going to consider non-competitive eligibles as well, which means that you could be a part of that. And again, they'll list off what they're looking for. Just pay attention to it. And then you still, on top of all of that, you still have the ability to compete just as a normal, everyday U.S. citizen, right? So just because you would be, say, applying, and I'm going to give you a quick scenario. Let's say they posted a job and it was for all U.S. citizens, but they said we are also going to be looking at AmeriCorps VISTA eligibles. Then on your resume, you should be writing out anywhere, just somewhere on your resume, that you want to be considered for the all U.S. citizens, but you are also eligible and want to be considered for the AmeriCorps VISTA non-competitive hiring authority. Let them know what you are eligible for, because then your name potentially would end up on both the list for all U.S. citizens and a list for AmeriCorps VISTA, okay? It's something that you, again, you have an opportunity that most don't, so take advantage of it. Get on there, create your account, set up your searches so that way your searches will work for you. Make sure when you, and like I said, Tom will go over the resume writing piece here, but make sure when you do your resumes, tailor them to the job so they can very clearly see you are qualified for the job, and then just track everything. So that's kind of what I got for this. If you have major questions, you can feel free to contact us at the outreach at opm.gov. Otherwise, we can go ahead and try to answer whatever questions pop up on here.
Yes. So, Todd, I have never seen so many questions in all the webinars that I've been doing over the years.
Well,
This is a hot topic. No. It's not that you haven't answered questions. It's that this is a topic that is somewhat confusing to people, and they have lots of questions, and this is great information. So thank you. So I'm going to feed as many questions as I can to you. I've been trying to answer them in the Q&A box as well. And please know, anybody who has questions about extension for NCE, I'm going to get to that. We'll make sure we do that slide, if nothing else, in terms of the formal presentation before we log off. So I'm going to go ahead and start feeding you some of the questions that I was not able to answer.
Okay.
So from Miranda, I'm interested in applying for government jobs categorized by the GS series. My year of VISTA service will have provided me with 360 days of GS 05-07 experience. What kind of document can I submit to the OPM to prove that this is so?
Well, the only thing that we would, well, okay, your resume.
Yeah.
That's it. So
Yep.
Here's the deal. And this applies to everybody out there. And it also applies to even a job if they were not looking at the non-competitives, right? When you're applying for a government job and you have never been a Fed and you don't have, you'll see the jobs will say you must have 1 year experience at the next lower grade of, say, GS4, right? And you've never been a Fed, so how do you know you've been a GS4 equivalent or a 5 equivalent? Well, your experience is what's going to speak for you to determine whether or not you have been the equivalent of that. So what you have to do is make sure when you are writing your resume, and I highly encourage you to come to the second one that Tom is going to be giving, you have to tie yourself into the job to show that you already have experience that directly ties to what we're saying you have to have for the job. If you can show us in your resume that all the things we say you had to have done, you can show us real experience that you have done it, then as far as we're concerned, you are the equivalent of that level. Okay, you don't actually have to have something because nobody can write up and say, yes, this was at the equivalency of a GS5 or a GS7. Nobody can write that up because every job varies as far, there is no, if you've done this, then automatically you're a GS5 for every single job. It's based off the actual announcement itself. So that's what you got to do. You've got to make sure that your resume shows all of your experience, which is also why a private sector resume really doesn't cut it, because in one page, you really can't get into details on what you have done and how it would directly tie into it. I will tell you, my federal resume is 6 pages long. Okay? So I have seen much longer. So long as it's relevant, that's fine. We are mandated. We have to look through every single page. So just make sure it's relevant information. So hopefully that answers your question.
Great, thanks. Okay, this is an interesting one from Alicia. Does NCE count when I apply to the Secret Service? And the reason why I wanted to bring this up is to explain that it's not counting. It's not like veteran status.
Right.
So it's any position that you apply within the federal government.
Yeah.
And it doesn't apply to state or local, does it?
No. No.
Okay, so it does not, somebody else had that question, so it does not apply for state or city government.
Yeah, this is for federal government only. That's what we control. And the key thing here to understand is that, you know, much like Liz was saying, if an agency says they are going to look at you because you are a VISTA and they're going to consider you as a VISTA, then you're able to apply because you've got your letter that states that, yes, I have my eligibility, I'm good to go. If an agency does not state that they're looking at them, then that means they're not looking at them, okay? Not every job is going to say we are also looking at special hiring authorities, all right? It's one thing we encourage, but it's not something that every job is going to be out there. So you can't just all of a sudden say, well, I want to go to work for this agency, so I see they posted a job, so because I have non-competitive eligibility, then I'm going to automatically go ahead and apply for that job, even though they didn't mention anything about non-competitive eligibility. All right, so it doesn't work that way. They got to say that they're considering the following groups.
Because I think sometimes there's confusion that it's like equivalent to being a veteran and you get points for it, and that's not
right.
how.
No, that's not the case. Right. Correct.
Okay. Okay, great. Where is there a website to find? Andy wants to know: is there a website to find and identify all pay grades? I have seen jobs where it pays pay grade 33, and I do not know what that translates into. Well, we kind of covered that, didn't we?
No, I'm sure there is. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head what all the different pays are and how they might translate. I would say Google. I hate to give that to you like that. But I don't have a website that you can go to that just tells you every single pay scale that's out there.
Right.
I would venture to say possibly OPM in the pay and leave section might have something on there. I haven't looked. But it's worth a shot. It's worth a shot of taking a look at OPM.gov and then go to the pay and leave section and see if it mentions it on there. But you know, and that's a particular instance. Usually you don't find a whole lot of them posted like that.
Great. So Darla wants to know, there's several questions about being hired for jobs overseas. So what are the chances of AmeriCorps VISTAs being hired on federal jobs overseas? And does their NCE status apply for example, working at different embassies overseas?
Well, if it's a State Department job, then it's a State Department job, regardless of where it is.
Right.
So it's not that, you know, if it's a State Department or a Department of Defense job, for example, the rules still apply. Just it doesn't change just because the job happens to be over in Germany or Spain or something like that. So if they say that, you know, and again, it comes down to if they say that we're going to, the job is in Spain and we are considering, you know, all U.S. citizens along with the following non-competitive eligibles, then they list them off, then you can apply to it regardless of where it is. Yeah, it's not that they all of a sudden say, well, if it's overseas, then these rules won't apply anymore. Because these are authorities that are being used, and they don't differentiate between where the job is actually going to be at.
Okay, great. So as long as it's with a federal agency, it doesn't matter where.
Right.
Okay, so Summer wants to know, a position I'm looking for, or I'm looking at, states applicants must have 1 year of specialized experience, paid, unpaid, or volunteer work, comparable in scope and responsibility to at least the upper ranges of the NY01 pay band, which would be at or equivalent to the GS05 level in the federal service. How can I find out what is comparable to a certain GS level?
Does does the job itself, which it should say an example of specialized experience for this job includes, and it lists off some things.
Okay, great. We get that question a lot.
Yeah, so when it lists off those things, those are the things that you must have. And here, let me restate that you must have. It's not I got one or two of them. It's you have to have them. All right? Tom's going to get into real detail on that, but that's the kicker. That's how you determine it. You read through that the qualifications required. It reads that first part that you just read off where it's saying it must have 1 year specialized experience, and then it should give the example of what that specialized experience is. So that's your example that you go by. If you can show that you have those things that they're saying you need to have, then at that point it's worth you applying for it because, I'm not there to look at your stuff, but the assumption should be in your mind that at least I think I'm qualified for it, and I think I've written it out well enough to show that.
All right, great. Okay. Let's see. There's lots of, like I said, there's lots of questions about extension, so I'm going to get to that in just a second. Jonah wants to know, is there any way to know the length of time from application to interview / job offer for federal jobs? In terms of planning, if I want to apply for a federal job, does it make sense to allow for 2, 3, 4 months before I might actually get a response?
We have an 80-day model. That's the model. Now, there are some agencies that are far faster than that, and there are other agencies that, due to the positions and the amount that's required to go through, that may take longer than that. But that's the goal, is 80 days. And of course, like I said, many of you are thinking, oh my gosh, 80 days. I get it and I understand, but again, you have to remember the process that we have to go through. So I'll give you a quick example. If I'm not using a non-competitive eligible authority, right? If I'm not using VISTA, if I'm saying all U.S. citizens is what I'm doing, and that's the way we're going to hire, and I'm standing alongside of a private company, and all 352 of you are lined up behind these lines, and we're both going through each of you. That person next to me can look at the first person in line, look at their resume, and say, you know what, I really like what I see here. You and I are really hitting it off well. I'm just going to go ahead and hire you. And then the other 351 don't get a chance to compete for the job because that person up front got there first. Whereas in the federal government, when it's the competitive process, we have to go through all 352 of you first and make sure that all 352 get a chance to see if they're qualified or not, and then rate and rank each one of them, and then figure out who's going to get interviewed, and so on and so forth. So the process can become long because there's a lot to do, and there's a lot, we are held by laws, rules, and regulations as opposed to, outside of, say, equal opportunity. A private company has the ability to make pretty easy decisions, whereas we have to make sure that we give everybody the opportunity to apply and go through the process fairly.
And hopefully, if nobody gets anything else from this presentation, that is a very important point. And also the fact that networking is still an important thing here, because if you have a relationship with some people that are federal hiring managers, then you will know when there are positions available. So that's why coming to this hiring fair on June 25th at the Department of Transportation, and I put the link in the Q&A box, and you'll also be sent it in the follow-up email. If you can come to that, those are really great opportunities.
Listen,
okay.
Just, if I might just throw one thing in on that, Liz.
Yep.
If you guys go to that hiring fair, and if you have updated your resumes to get ready for that hiring fair, and my recommendation is go out and look at some of the jobs that are on USA Jobs that you think you might be interested in and start writing your resume to reflect those. That's the opportunity to get your resume in front of somebody that they can collect those resumes, because if they're going to do flat-out non-competitive hiring through that authority, say for VISTA, and they're not going to post the job, you've already given them your resume, so that way they know that you're interested in a job there and you're eligible to be non-competitively hired. That's an opportunity for you, like Liz is saying, to get in front of them and to give them your resume, which is your application. Whereas at a normal job fair, they're usually telling you get on USA Jobs because they're going through the competitive process. So it becomes different. So I highly encourage you, if you can do it, to be a part of what Liz was just saying.
Absolutely. Thank you. Okay, so we have literally 1 minute left, and there were so many questions about extension that I want to cover that before we end. So there are 3 reasons for an extension. First of all, let me just say that your NCE status starts the day after your close of service. And you can extend for an additional 2 years for a total of 3 years from that service date. There are 3 reasons why you can extend. 1, you enter the military after your VISTA service. 2, you become a full-time student at a recognized institution of higher learning after your service. 3, you engage in another activity that the hiring agency thinks warrants an extension. That is the grayest of the reasons. And let me just say that to give you an example. So let's say you've had an internship or you've had another job that is in a field related to the job in which you are applying to, and it's added to your experience and it's making you a better candidate for that job. The federal hiring manager could then see that through your resume that you've been doing very good work and gained great experience over the last 1 or 2 years since you served as a VISTA, and therefore warrant you an extension. But it is up to the hiring manager. And I would say to you, while it would be great if all federal hiring managers knew that, a lot of them do, and a lot of them don't. That's what Todd and I are working on. So you may have to educate them and tell them that you can have an extension for up to 3 years because of what you've been doing. So I just wanted to make sure that that information got in part. We're out of time here, so I want to make sure that you all answer our survey over here. And I know that we didn't get to all of your questions, which I'm so sorry about. So please do join us for part 2 of this on July 22nd. And we will, you can ask your questions there. You can also, the email address, we'll make sure you have that again. The email address that Todd said, can you say it again? Was it outreach@opm.gov?
Yes, it is. Yeah,
okay.
And if you have the specific questions, again, Tom will be able to answer any of them. We're kind of interchangeable, so you know, either email or feel free to ask it once you get over to the other session.
Great. And while you're filling out the evaluation, please know that there are a couple of other resources on the campus. Under the alumni section, there's a quick links box, and there's a certification of service link, which will tell you how to get your letter of non-compete from the AmeriCorps portal, your account on the AmeriCorps portal. And then there's a what is non-competitive eligibility, and that will take you through a tutorial. This is a screenshot from that tutorial that it will hopefully answer any other questions that we haven't answered here today about non-competitive eligibility. That's a screenshot there of your letter of non-compete. And that doesn't appear until after you have served. And I know that's sometimes frustrating to people because they want to start job searching earlier. So our advice to you is go ahead and use the letter that says you're currently serving and let the hiring manager know. Put it in your cover letter, put it in your resume, put it in your application that you will have NCE status as of whatever date it is. Okay, well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Todd, so much. This is a lot of information, and we really appreciate you taking the time to be with us here today and help make sense of this hiring process. Thank you so much, and thanks to everybody for what you're doing every day out there in communities across America, and we want to do whatever we can to support you after your service is over and when you're an alumni. So thanks, everybody, and we'll see you online next time.
All right, good luck. Thanks again.
Thank you, and this does conclude today's conference. We thank you for your participation. At this time, you may disconnect.